Hello and welcome back to the channel. Thank you for joining me today in another of my monologues. I'm up in the studio because I want to show you some pictures today. One of my correspondents got in touch with me, one of my lovely viewers, and he sent me something which he thought was somewhat worrying, and we'll get onto that in a second. As you may know, I am demonetized, and I'm still waiting to see. I have appealed YouTube to see if they will let me have some sort of income. I've also pulled back from the interviews for the rest of this month. There will be occasional interviews coming, but as you may have seen in the video that we did yesterday, Julia and I are looking for some land, and there'll be more progress on that as and when that happens. So that's sort of just going on in the background, and I'm working on some other bits and pieces. And I just want to say a big thank you to all those people who are supporting the channel and sending their donations, and thank you very much. If you want to send a donation, of course, there is all the links down in the description. There is one in which you can go through Blair Bullion, and you can sort of, make a donation of, say, £5 or something like that, or 10 quid, whatever you so wish. It accrues up to a certain amount, and then Caroline from Blair Bullion will send me silver, so it doesn't actually go through the bank and fiat currency and all of that, which is a great help. And somewhere I feel in the future that we are going to need to be independent from the banks as much as we can, but more on that in more videos coming, of course. In the meantime, back to today, a chap called Martin emailed me, and he said that his wife had to go to hospital, and anybody who has to go to hospital, I have my greatest sympathy, because we know how hospitals have complied with government directives for certain rather nasty activities 4 years ago, as we've seen. However, people do have to go to these places if they have certain operations that they need to have. So, he goes in quite ordinarily and decides to have a cheese sandwich. And I've got a picture of that cheese sandwich, funnily enough, or at least the packaging. Here it is, mature cheese on white bread. Isn't that lovely? How delicious, you might think. But have a look at it a little bit more closely. It's got the fats and the saturates and the sugars and the salt all listed. But what's that at the beginning? That's very strange. Energy. What is that talking about? And then what about the one at the end, 11.2%? This is something to do with your carbon allowance. Excuse me? What does that mean? Let's just have another close-up here. On the back, it says we are now tracking our carbon emissions. So this tells you how many grams of greenhouse gas emissions, CO2, were used to make this sandwich. The percentage shows how much of a UK adult's 2,469 dietary carbon daily allowance is in this sandwich. I'm sorry, daily allowance. I'll just read that again, because you may not have quite took in the gravity of that. The percentage shows you how much of a UK adult's 2,469 grams daily carbon allowance. Daily carbon. I'm sorry. This is an allowance made by somebody somewhere, presumably in the government, is saying that we are only allowed this much food with that much carbon in it. And there it is. This sandwich required by your daily dietary carbon emissions. So we don't have anything mandated at the moment, of course. We can go and buy whatever rubbish from the supermarket you want to, or from these little funny instant supermarkets, not the corner shops, who I have a great favour for, or indeed the farm shops, which I have an even greater favour for, those that are making grass-fed food. And this is where we desperately need our farmers to return to. More about that in a minute. But this sort of thing, this kind of thing here, is a bit worrying, isn't it? The daily, that's what it said, the daily allowance, your daily carbon allowance, UK adults. So I'm a bit confused by that. But of course, what it's doing is it's telling us that in the future, food will be restricted, and you will only be able to eat certain amounts of carbon food that has got CO2 in it, which means that the government is looking at introducing what would you call it? They had it during the Second World War, didn't they? Where you were restricted on what you could have. And the word has just escaped me. You know what I'm talking about. In which you were limited in what you could eat. And it looks like this is just now coming into the packaging to normalise it. And no doubt there'll be signs up all over the place. And so that you'll just get it'll be normalised until you don't think it's any different. That, oh yeah, okay, yeah, we've got a daily allowance. We're not allowed to eat too much meat, or I mustn't have too much dairy products or milk, raw milk, or anything other than worms and all the stuff they want us to eat, the sort of green stuff they want us to eat that has been generated artificially with pesticides on all of that, which is nutrient free and Amazon deficient. Amazon deficient? I think I meant to say vitamin deficient. I don't know what the big river has got to do with it, but anyway. So I think this is a huge worry that they are going to be forcing this on us incrementally so that we get very much used to it over the next few years and we go, oh yeah, this is our daily allowance. Now, the farmers, it seems, are marching on Tuesday down to see the government. They're having to jump through hoops, apparently, which is a bit strange. They've had to sort of acquiesce with the police, from what I understand. And anybody going also has to sort of sign up on a form. And no doubt the facial recognition cameras are all out there ready to record everybody who goes along. And so that, the government can just decide who to put in prison and who not, and say, oh yeah, you're a ringleader, you're an undesirable, whatever it is. And I gather that the farmers are, negotiated some route and all of that in order to march. And I thought a protest was something where you just suddenly turn up and you protest unexpectedly. But if you're having to sort of jump through hoops and go, oh yes, come down here and park there and go there and do all this, then all of a sudden it just seems like a managed meeting rather than something to say, actually, we're very upset and we're going to do something about it. So I don't know quite what effect that will do. Personally, I think this is a bit of a trap. I think farmers are being misled and that going down to London is a huge mistake because the powers that be, those people who are putting all that tyranny on the farmers, they know. They know that there's going to be a reaction. They know that the farmers are not going to be happy, and they know how to handle that. And they'll make these half promises and then will never deliver on it. Anything just to quell the upset. In my opinion, and I am a lone voice, I realise that, and people laugh at me and say, oh, Richard, you don't know what you're talking about. You're not a farmer. What would you know about it? Personally, I think the farmers have the biggest amount of power. They're the ones that produce the food in this country. And if they want to continue to actually have real food in this country, they should be meeting well away from Parliament. On this day, they should take advantage of that and meet and decide, you know what, we are going to make a stand against people like DEFRA, against the government, against the agricultural policies that are being put against us, which are stopping us from growing real food. We should be looking, instead of these huge contracts for commodities in which we are destroying the soil, we should be looking at ways to improve the soil and growing nutrient food with vitamins and go more directly to the public rather than going through the supermarkets, which have been the bane of farmers for years, with the contracts in which there's a rush to the bottom and the farmers are supposedly producing food for almost no profit at cost and in many times below cost to suit the supermarkets, large corporations who, let's face it, have put out of business many family-run businesses of little grocers and grocery shops and all of that. And they'll continue to do that. The stranglehold from these great big corporations is ever increasing. And in my opinion, we need to get back to smaller farms, mixed farms, farms that will give us real food, grass-fed food, and regenerate the soil so that we can continue to provide food. After all, farmers, it seems to me, are custodians of the landscape. They're not there to just make a quick buck and have solar panels coming in on their land or to grow anything but food. These custodians of the landscape have inherited, one way or another, an amazing resource from their ancestors who have looked after it. And if they destroy that, the public will have a lot to say, because the public rely on good quality, healthy food. And if the farmers just acquiesce to the government's and the globalists' plan, then basically we're all doomed. And I would hold these farmers responsible. Now, there are some farmers out there, of course, smaller people who want to get back on the land, who don't believe in the man-made global warming myth, who don't think that you need a daily allowance of carbon in your food, who do believe in producing real healthy food and getting schemes back together in which they can deliver the food to the customer directly without having to go through these great big conglomerates who are trying to scrape the profit off the top. And I applaud them. I applaud them, and the public applaud them too, because we want to be healthy, and the way to be healthy is to eat real, genuine food that has all the minerals and vitamins and goodness in it, rather than having these monoculture sweeping around as commodities with nothing in it. So I personally think that this is a bit of a misnomer, going down and acquiescing to what the government and trying to get the government to change. I mean, you're basically going cap in hand saying, we acknowledge that you're the bosses and we're begging you to please reconsider. Whereas I think they have the strength already. They're already sovereign people, and they could turn around and just say, do you know what, DEFRA? Do you know what, government? We're not doing your stuff. Do you know what, big corporations, big agriculture? We're not doing that. We're not going to go and make people ill. We're not going to go with your thing. We're actually going to get a big body of our own, the farmers' own union, not the National Farmers Union. That seems to be a weak thing that's stuck with the government as well. But we're going to gather ourselves together and do something for the real people of this country and get more people working on the farm, appreciating the value of real food. Just my humble opinion, and you can laugh at me and say, Richard, you don't know what you're talking about. It's all a load of rubbish. But you can see where it's going, can't you, with this? This is where we're being taken, down the line of daily allowances and all this nonsense, thanks to the myth that we are producing too much carbon and that planet is warming up. That is complete rubbish. We know that's rubbish. You shouldn't need to do that. We should be producing real food for real people. And the sooner that we get back to that, then the better it is. Thank you so much for watching.